Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. I believe this is episode 18 now, which is kind of crazy. Today, I'm by myself, have a lot to talk about, and that's kind of the reason why. It's the NBA trade deadline, and there was a lot of moves that we're going to discuss. Now, I should note that before we hop into this, I didn't put any moves prior to the deadline, Rondo to the Cavs, Cam Reddish to the Knicks. Cam Johnson would be crazy, though. Bryn Forbes to the Nuggets. Bol Bol, who got traded to the Celtics. We might have to talk about Bol Bol a little bit after, but we're not going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the trades that happened this past week. And I think the first one we're going to start with, the first major trade, it happened with the Clippers and the Blazers. Norman Powell and Robert Covington going to L.A., the real team in L.A., in exchange for, Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a 2025 second-round pick via Detroit. What I think about this trade is I think that, at the time, I was thinking, what are the Blazers doing? Because, obviously they've made more moves after this that maybe lean towards a certain direction they're going to be going. But for me, I was really confused by that, and it seems like they could have got a lot more for, at least a guy like Norman Powell. I mean, Robert Covington, at this point, it's going to be really hard to get that. But I don't know. I thought that the Clippers, adding Powell and Covington, if they don't get Kawhi and Paul George back sometime this year, or if they only get Paul George back, I mean, it's huge because he can assert himself into that role, averaging 19 points per game this year, and he's been pretty consistent. So, I gotta give him credit where it's due, and I think he's gonna be more motivated with the Clippers. A good two-way player. Robert Covington, a great defender, offensively inconsistent, but yeah. So I think the Clippers won that trade. I mean, Portland seems like they're in a complete rebuild mode. They might not even keep a lot of these guys, maybe Keon Johnson, but we'll just have to see. Moving on, though, to the trade number 2, the big name here, Caris LeVert, going from Indiana to Cleveland, along with a 2022 second-round pick via Miami. The Pacers get back Ricky Rubio, a 2022 first-round pick, which is actually lottery protected, a 2022 second-round pick via the Houston Rockets, and then a 2027 second-round pick via the Utah Jazz. I think this is kind of a win-win trade. The Cavaliers, they've had a hole at shooting guard this year, as basically losing Colin Sexton early in the season sucks. And getting Caris LeVert, he could play that role. Now they didn't start him the other day. I think that's probably just more so getting acclimated to the team and all that stuff. But yeah, I think that personally, Caris LeVert's going to be really good with Cleveland. He's already played with Jared Allen before. So only time will tell. As for the Pacers, Ricky Rubio's probably not going to be there long term. Let's be real. He might, honestly, I believe he's eligible to go back to Cleveland. So he might go back there. Unless they won a championship, then he'd probably be a little mad, and he probably wouldn't want to go back there after they did him wrong. But I think they even would still credit him with a ring if they did. But I don't know. I think that it's kind of a win-win. Getting 3 picks back if you're the Pacers is pretty huge. But yeah, we can move on. We can talk about the third trade, and this one focuses on CJ McCollum. And this is why I said, with the first trade with the Blazers and Clippers, things didn't really make sense for Portland because it seemed like, they're just going to keep Dame and CJ and Nurkic and everyone on the roster. But no, they actually parted ways with CJ. It was pretty surprising. Actually, it's funny because my dad yesterday texted me, and he's like, CJ not playing today? And I didn't want to tell him that I'm like, yeah, he kind of got traded. But yeah, so he's going to the Pelicans along with Larry Nance, who's having surgery, Tony Snell as well, and the Portland Trailblazers are getting back Josh Hart, Thomas Satoransky, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Didi Louzada, and a 2022 first-round pick, along with 2 future second-round picks. Now that first-round pick for this year, it's going to be going to the Pelicans if it's 1-4, so they have that protection. The Blazers from 5 to 14, and then from 15 to 30, it's going to go to the Hornets. But I think it's kind of this is a better trade for Portland anyways. They got more so closer to the value of the main piece, CJ McCollum, than they did with the Norman Powell trade. Larry Nance for the Pelicans, I believe he's going to be having like surgery or something, so he might be out for the season, honestly. But, you got Tony Snell, CJ McCollum. You add shooting to your team. Not much defense, obviously. The Blazers did add some defense, though, with Josh Hart, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, probably one of the most underrated players in the NBA, and he has a lot of potential, too. So we'll see where that goes. I think that New Orleans is probably trying to make a play-in push, whereas Portland kind of taking the year off. They're hoping for next year, like when Dame comes back, if he doesn't come back this season, and maybe they'll restructure the team around him too. So moving on to trade number 4, we got a swap between the Sacramento Kings and the Indiana Pacers. For the Sacramento Kings, adding in Domantas Sabonis, who I'm sure a lot of people didn't think he was going to get traded, even though people thought like the Pacers, were kind of in rebuild mode or, didn't really know what they were doing. This is kind of surprising, I would say, especially going to a team like the Kings. It just seemed like the Kings, they don't really have like a trajectory per se. Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, solid additions, but they're not going to like move, the needle or anything like that. A 2027 second round pick, it's also there. I think the biggest thing though in the trade is that Tyrese Halliburton is gone, and he went to Indiana. And this is why I'm titling this video, it's like the most savage NBA trade deadline, because you got, the Blazers, they actually decided to let go of CJ. You got the Kings who let go of Tyrese Halliburton. And we got another guy coming up in a few trades here that, he was kind of savage with the way that he went about his business and getting to his new team. I'm not going to spoil that, but I think you guys already know who I'm alluding to. But no, I think Tyrese Halliburton going to the Pacers is going to be a huge trade for them over the next several years. They also have Buddy Hield, who they ended up not moving, which some people thought they might have before the last 2 days before the deadline. And then Tristan Thompson, we'll see what happens there. I think his contract is pretty friendly that they very well could buy him out or something like that, maybe trade him in the summer. We'll just have to see what happens there. I think that this is it's more so a win for the Pacers because you dump a lot of salary, and that's kind of what they were doing with this trade and the LeVert trade. They get a guy like Tyrese Halliburton, who's going to be huge for many years to come. So I think that that's definitely a W, and we'll just have to see how that all works out. Moving on to trade number 5 is mainly, as a 3-team trade. I think the biggest fish or the biggest known name here would probably be Joe Ingles, who is out now for the rest of the season, which does suck for him. And it's also kind of savage that the Jazz traded him. It's like this dude just got injured, and I believe tore his ACL, and you let him go. That's something that you probably wouldn't even think, this dude just got hurt, and now they're just dissing him. So he's going to Portland. Same thing with Elijah Hughes and a 2022 second-round pick. Meanwhile, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who actually got moved after the trade for CJ McCollum, so now he got moved again. He's going to Utah, and so is Juan Hernan-Gomez. And then the San Antonio Spurs, they're receiving Thomas Satoransky, who was also in that deal for CJ McCollum, and then a 2027 second-round pick. For this trade, I think that, like I said, Nickeil Alexander-Walker has pretty solid potential that not a lot of people talk about him, and I think he's probably going to be the best player in this trade. Also, Juan Hernan-Gomez is not bad himself. I think that he could be a good like stretch big. He had some size as well, so there's that. And the Jazz, they kind of need. I feel like they just need another shot creator. And I think, Nickeil Alexander-Walker can provide that because it's not like they don't have him. They got Jordan Clarkson, but he's been really inconsistent. Mike Conley is there, but I wouldn't really even be confident relying on him long term. And he's a little inconsistent at points as well. So, he's getting older too. So I like that they got him on this trade. It is kind of cruel, though, to see Joe Ingles go in the fashion that he did. But if Joe Ingles comes back 100%, he could add some floor spacing to Portland, who also gets another pick. So they're kind of leaning toward like a rebuild or a retool because they haven't said they're going to trade Dame or anything like that. So we'll just have to see like what happens there. But I don't know. I think that, the Spurs on this end, it's not really a terrible trade. I don't know. It's just kind of like a mid trade per se. Getting Thomas Satoransky, not really going to be a game changer. But yeah, before we get into the next big trade, here's just a mini trade, is KZ Okpala going from the Heat to the Thunder, and the Thunder give the Heat a 2026 second-round pick. Not much really to say there, but, it did happen, so had to cover it. The sixth main trade is surrounding Serge Ibaka, and it's a 4-team trade. And so the Bucks receive Serge Ibaka along with 2 second-round picks, both coming from the Pistons. You got the Clippers, who add Rodney Hood and Semi Ojeleye. You got the Kings adding Dante DiVincenzo, Trey Lyles, and Josh Jackson. And then the Pistons add Marvin Bagley, who, the Pistons, they kind of got the least amount of assets in terms of like quantity of, anyone. And I think that adding Marvin Bagley, we'll see if maybe he can be unleashed there because it seemed like things weren't working out with Sacramento. He'd have a few games here and there, but I think part of that is just like a consistent role. The LA Clippers, I was surprised, honestly, by this trade. It's not like, getting Rodney Hood and Semi Ojeleye isn't a good return maybe for Serge Ibaka at this point because Ibaka is a little bit older, doesn't move the same defensively. And he's a little bit inconsistent too. He's injury prone, so it does make sense why they would move Ibaka, and they get players of this caliber. I just think that maybe they could have got someone a little bit bigger because now they don't really have like a true stretch 5, unless they played like really small and they put Marcus Morris there, which I don't know if they want to do long term. But who knows? We'll see. He's done a solid job in the past of guarding bigs like Anthony Davis, I believe Jokic too, so who knows? The Kings getting Trey Lyles, Josh Jackson, those are kind of just 2 guys that haven't really panned out in the way people had hoped in the NBA. Trust me, like I was on the Josh Jackson bandwagon at one point. I believe somewhere on YouTube like 5 years ago I said he'd be the next Kawhi Leonard. So, and it's actually, I think on my channel, I think I exposed that anyways, but obviously not. But I think he could, show himself a little bit better with the Kings. Of course, he was with Detroit anyways, so how much more of a role could he execute per se? It is funny, though, that they got Dante DiVincenzo because remember last year they almost got him for Bogdanovich from the Hawks. And then that trade fell apart with the Bucks and the Kings. And then after that, Bogdanovich went to Atlanta. So I think that's it's kind of interesting. The Bucks side of this, Serge Ibaka, I don't really know where he fits in because it's like they got Brook Lopez, who's missed most of the season. Maybe he's not coming back at all this year, but they still also have Bobby Portis. So it's like Ibaka you're getting is like a backup big. They do get 2 second rounders, so we'll kind of see how that goes. Trade number 7, it surrounds Thaddeus Young and Goran Dragic being really flipped. There are a few other pieces added into this trade, but Thaddeus Young going to the Raptors, the Spurs getting Goran Dragic, the Raptors also getting Drew Eubanks and a 2022 second round pick via Detroit. and the San Antonio Spurs are getting a 2022 lottery protected first round pick as well. I was kind of surprised that a first round pick was even put in here, because the Raptors, they're not going to be a top 3, top 4 seed in the East, and even if they were, the top 3 or 4 records are going to lie in the Western Conference this year. Simple as that. You look at the Suns, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Jazz might, maybe the Mavericks, but we'll talk about the Mavericks in a bit. Both these guys, though, I think Thaddeus Young might be more secured with Toronto because they've kind of been looking for like another big, with Chris Boucher not playing quite to the way they hoped this year. After last year, he was a most improved candidate. And Goran Dragic, he'll probably be in the buyout market, I'm sure. I think Woj tweeted teams like the Mavericks, the Bucks, the Bulls, and the Clippers are all interested in getting him. So, we'll see. As a Bulls fan, I don't know if I'd really want him because we already got Kobe and Ayo, Caruso, Lonzo. We got, every guard in the league that ends with an O. No, but I don't think that he really fits on our team. I think that we just have too many guards. But yeah, another mini trade. I said earlier, Bol Bol going to the Celtics. Well, now he's gone again from the Celtics. Going to Orlando with PJ Dozier and cash. And then Boston will receive a second-round pick. So the 8th trade, and probably the biggest trade of the entire week, James Harden, gone out of Brooklyn, and he's going to the Philadelphia 76ers, joining with Joel Embiid, of course, but he's coming over with Paul Millsap. The Brooklyn Nets are going to receive Ben Simmons. Yeah, you haven't heard that name in a while, or only everywhere in the media, just, not playing. So we'll see if he's actually going to, start playing with the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets also get Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, a 2022 unprotected first-round pick, and then a 2027 protected first-round pick. So they got definitely more assets back than Philadelphia, but it's just about how, is James Harden going to fit in with Joel Embiid? I think it is big that they got this trade off. It didn't have to give up Tyrese Maxey. You didn't have to give up Tobias Harris. And you didn't have to give up Matisse Thybulle, who is, one of the best defensive players, one could argue, in the league. So I think that that's very impressive, and I think Philadelphia is trying to make a case to be that top-tier contender. I have seen some Philadelphia 76ers fans saying, though, that even though Harden was a free agent this summer, and I say was because he's agreed to his option for next year already, but, people were kind of high on doing this trade for the simple fact that if it did fail, then, that would be the time to get rid of Doc Rivers. Because, if you can't win with this, you're never going to win with us. So I think that that's, pretty interesting. And it does make sense. If Philadelphia did lose again this year, and then you look at the way they lost last year and the way that the Clippers lost the year before when he was the coach of them, you got to start looking at Doc Rivers in a different way. Top 15 coach of all time, Doc Rivers. But that's a discussion for another day. On the Nets side of this, their defense has not been great this year. And adding Ben Simmons, who, he can't shoot. We all know that this dude cannot shoot. But at the same time, we can't deny that he's one of the best defenders in the league, especially as a guard in Philly. Now, I don't think he will be a guard with the Nets. I think he'll be more of like a point forward. He'll kind of have like a Blake Griffin role, I think. Like a not a current Blake Griffin. I shouldn't say that, but I think like a prime Blake Griffin where he can bring the ball to the floor. He's athletic. He's got the defensive edge on Blake for sure, and even prime Blake could shoot better than Ben right now. But I just think that, from that simple standpoint where he'll probably be in the pick and roll game a lot as the roller, and, we'll see what happens there. Adding Seth Curry gives them another shooter. Adding Andre Drummond gives them a lot for rebounding and, a presence really inside. it seemed like the Nets had to make a move right now because they're on a 9-game losing streak. We don't know how long, if Harden was really injured or not. We don't know how long he would have held out. He could have held out for weeks or got surgery or something. And then it's like, the Nets just have Kyrie half the time, who we don't know if he'll switch to, getting the, thing that he needs to be a full-time player. And then Kevin Durant's already not there right now. So who knows how long the losing streak could have gone. It could have been too much to overcome. So they had to make a move right now. And, we don't know if Ben Simmons is going to play first game on, I think they play Saturday. Who knows if he'll be there, right away. But at the same time, it's like you'll have Seth Curry, you'll have Andre Drummond. So who knows? I think those are two important additions to the team. Don't think either of them are going to contribute as much as James Harden could have. But maybe all of them together, you could make that argument. And in terms of the fit, it just might make more sense at the end of the day. So trade number 9, it's surrounding Derrick White and Josh Richardson, kind of getting flipped for each other from Boston and San Antonio. And then the Spurs, along with Josh Richardson, they receive a Romeo Langford and a first-round pick. This was kind of a surprising trade from what I saw because, the reports early on were that, there's rumors that teams are looking at Dennis Schroder. If he gets bought out, teams will want to get Dennis Schroder, all this stuff. Everything was about Schroder. And they're like, they feel confident in Josh Richardson being a backup playmaking guard for them. I was seeing news about that all yesterday until this morning. Come today, he's gone and he's a San Antonio Spur. I just think it's kind of funny. Now, I don't think it really does too much with the team. I am surprised, though, that the Celtics gave up a first-round pick along with Richardson and Langford just to get Derrick White. Derrick White was playing pretty solid for the San Antonio Spurs this year. Don't have the numbers off, right in front of me, but I think he was averaging 13, 14 points a game or something like that. So, he's not bad, and he'll probably be one of their main scoring options for sure, but I don't know. I think they might have gave up a little bit too much to try and add Derrick White to this team. And, the Spurs side of things, they're not going to do much with either of those guys. That pick should be interesting, though, especially, I'd have to look more into detail about when that pick is. But, yeah, so that should be interesting. Then we had mini trade number 3, and this is with the Phoenix Suns and the Indiana Pacers. So the Phoenix Suns getting Torrey Craig, and then the Indiana Pacers getting Jalen Smith and a future second-round pick. Nothing much there, but it is cool that Torrey Craig is back on the Phoenix Suns. Jalen Smith is going to the Indiana Pacers. Probably get more of an opportunity there for sure. We got trade number 10. This one is surrounding Montrezl Harrell, going to the Charlotte Hornets in exchange for Vernon Carey Jr. and Ish Smith. Now, there's not really much to say about this, and I was thinking about making this a mini trade on the schedule here too. But I don't know. You never know what Harrell you can get. You could get 20 and 10 or 18 and 10 Harrell, or you could get the Montrezl Harrell that's a liability and he can't really add much to your team. So, with that being said, I think it is important in some way. The Hornets, they probably have been needing a move. They were in 7th, pretty close to 6th not too long ago. Now they've kind of fallen down at 9th. They took an L the other night they took an L to us. So, I don't know. I think that this could be interesting, and we'll just have to see how it goes. So, the 4th mini trade that we had was the Phoenix Suns. They didn't just get Torrey Craig, but they also added Aaron Holiday, who could be an important playmaker for them off the bench. The Wizards got cash in return. Not really much to say there. Just a simple, you take this player, we'll take some money. It seemed like the Wizards just kind of wanted to get rid of him. And speaking of the Wizards, that wasn't where they finished because they made probably the more surprising move of the day considering all the details that led up to it. Anyone could have maybe thought the Harden deal might happen. CJ might go. The Pacers might blow it up. But I don't think anyone was talking about this, and that's why this one might be the most surprising trade of them all. And that is the Mavericks received Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans, and the Wizards received a second-round pick and Kristaps Porzingis, who's traded again in kind of the second time now that he's kind of been traded by surprise. If you guys remember when he got traded from the Knicks to the Mavericks, he said, I'm requesting a trade randomly, and he hadn't even played like that whole year. That's why it was so surprising then. And then sure enough, they trade him, I think, in like a half hour after that. Now it's like we get no details here. And I don't know if he like requested a trade or anything like that. But the point is, nobody was talking about Kristaps Porzingis, especially since he'd missed a lot of games recently. So to see him go, it is pretty surprising. And to go to the Wizards, he'll probably be able to boost his stock there, honestly. If you guys saw Bradley Beal, he's going to be getting surgery. He's probably going to be missing like the rest of the season. And the Wizards, they're not doing anything. So he could be like the number one guy for the rest of the season. And that's probably the first time he's been able to have that opportunity in like four years. Actually, a little over 4 years, because he got hurt with the ACL in like January of 2018. And we're in February of 2022. So it's been over 4 years since you could say Luka was for sure the number one option. Now he's going to have that opportunity again, at least for the remainder of this year. Maybe he'll get traded in the offseason, but that's why I think it's a good trade for the Wizards, because he can kind of boost his value. And, with that being said, if he does, then it'll be easier to trade him for even more, especially more than Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. And this is why the Mavericks, they might be the biggest losers, in my opinion, at the trade deadline. Because, first of all, you're adding Spencer Dinwiddie, who I just don't think is a good fit there. I feel like he's going to take a lot away from Luka. The way Luka struggled early in the season, you might see that again, honestly, alongside Spencer Dinwiddie. And they might learn to grow to learn that it's just not the right fit in this system. And then you get Davis Bertans, who I just don't think he'll even play. I mean, you look at some of their guys in Dallas already, like their forwards. They got Finney Smith and, Kleber. They got like Dwight Powell and stuff. Like, seems like their front court's already kind of set, and you're adding Davis Bertans to that, but he's making almost like $20 million a year. I think he's on like a 4-year, $70-something million deal. He's getting like 16, 17 million a season. Wasn't really playing with the Wizards either. So, and he's on contract till like 2025. That's almost an immovable contract at this point, and I'm really surprised that they actually took that trade, bringing him back. But yeah, that one just caught my eye. And then the last mini trade that we have is the Boston Celtics receiving Daniel Tice back once again, and the Rockets received Dennis Schroder, Enes Freedom, or Enes Kanter, and then Bruno Fernando. The reason I put this as a mini trade, because it does seem like a lot. Dennis Schroder is an important player, but at the same time, it's like him going to Houston doesn't really do much. Daniel Tice to Boston doesn't really do much. And then I believe the Rockets are already going to waive Enes Freedom, and then potentially Bruno Fernando as well. So, yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't think it's like a legitimate high-level trade in my own assessment, in my own opinion. So, I mean, we're just gonna have to see what happens. And I am surprised. Obviously we could talk about surprises at the trade deadline. I think the biggest surprise, well, it's got to be the Lakers. That they made no moves, especially since they have been pretty bad this year. And then especially, of course, I think they wanted to move Russell Westbrook, and I'm sure they were calling people about trying to move him because he's been like the main guy that they've been putting a lot of the blame on this year. But even then, like, they couldn't move like THT, or they couldn't move Reeves or whoever, like in a win now scenario, if they were going to go all in to get better like right now. That just kind of surprised me. They didn't make one move. So that's a bit weird. I'm also a bit surprised that the Orlando Magic didn't trade some of their, their guards, because they got a lot of guards there. And especially seeing all these dudes get traded like while they're hurt anyways, this trade deadline, like I said, the most savage trade deadline I've probably ever seen. I was a little bit shocked that maybe they could have included Markelle Fultz in a trade or maybe Jalen Suggs in a trade or something like that and build around like Cole Anthony or maybe one of those things. Like I feel like eventually they're gonna have to decide regardless, and not just their young point guards and stuff like that, but they got veterans too that could help out contenders like Gary Harris. I think Gary Harris could fit in on just about any team in the NBA. Terrence Ross. I mean, he's definitely a guy that when he's feeling it, like he's almost unguardable. Of course, he's a bit inconsistent. Same thing with Gary Harris on offense, but defensively, you know what you're going to get out of Harris like almost every single night. So, those were some of the surprises, I would say. In terms of my Bulls not making a move, not the biggest thing in the world. There still is time for the buyout market, of course. We might get a backup center there because Tony Bradley needs to go. Simple as that. But overall, I think it was a pretty interesting trade deadline, to say the least. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching. If you did, be sure to like, comment, subscribe down below. Next week, I'll probably be back at it with the original format of stuff. Obviously, with the trade deadline and so many trades to cover, if I had a guest on here, we played like a trivia game and stuff, like it would be like a 7-hour show. And personally, I just didn't have time for that this week with a lot of my other stuff. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm out. Peace.